Jiwoo carried the heavy tray through the massive dining hall. Her arms hurt, but she kept walking. The Galactic Council Hall was the biggest building she had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that clouds formed inside it. Giant windows showed the stars and planets outside. Hundreds of aliens sat at long tables eating and talking in their strange languages. Jiwoo was just a server. She was human, and humans were new to the galaxy. Only 5 years ago, Earth had joined the Galactic Council. Most aliens still thought humans were weak and boring. They gave humans the simple jobs like serving food and cleaning floors. But Jiwoo needed the money. She had left Earth to work here. The pay was good, and she sent most of it back to her family in Busan. Her mother was sick, and her younger brother needed money for school. So Jiwoo smiled at the rude aliens and carried their heavy trays. Tonight was special. The Dragon King was visiting. The Draconians were one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. They looked like huge lizards that walked on 2 legs. Their scales were red and gold, and they had wings folded on their backs. Fire came from their mouths when they spoke. But it was not regular fire. It was telepathic flame. When Draconians talked to each other, they breathed out colored fire, and the flames carried their thoughts directly into each other's minds. Jiwoo watched them from across the room. The Dragon King sat at the center table. He was massive, twice as tall as a human even while sitting. His scales were deep red, almost black, and his golden eyes glowed. Next to him sat a smaller Draconian. This one had lighter scales, more orange than red. He looked young, maybe a teenager in human years. That was Prince Taemin. Jiwoo had heard the other servers talking about him. The prince was mute. He could not make the telepathic flames that other Draconians used to speak. To his people, he was broken, damaged. Some even whispered that he was cursed. Jiwoo picked up another tray and walked closer to the Draconian table. She needed to refill their drinks. As she approached, she saw the Dragon King talking to a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. The king breathed purple and gold flames. The other alien nodded and laughed. They were making a deal about trading routes or something. Business talk. Prince Taemin sat very still. His hands were flat on the table. His golden eyes watched everyone, but no one looked at him. When a servant approached with food, they served the king and the other important Draconians. They skipped the prince. They acted like he was not there. Jiwoo felt a strange pain in her chest. She knew that feeling, the feeling of being invisible, of being ignored because people thought you did not matter. She walked to the prince's side. The other servers stared at her. One of them, a tall alien with tentacles, made a clicking sound that meant stupid human. But Jiwoo did not care. She picked up the pitcher of starfruit wine and poured it into the prince's glass. Taemin's eyes snapped to her face. He looked surprised, maybe even shocked. Probably no one had served him directly in a long time. Jiwoo gave him a small smile. Then she moved to the next guest. For the rest of the evening, she watched the prince. Every time she passed near the Draconian table, she noticed more things. The way his shoulders were tense, like he was ready to be hurt. The way his claws gripped the edge of the table when someone laughed nearby, like he thought they were laughing at him. The way his eyes followed his father's conversations, hungry to understand, to be part of it, but always locked out. Once, a Draconian lady walked past the prince. Her wing knocked his glass off the table. It shattered on the floor. The lady did not even stop. She did not apologize. She just kept walking, breathing pink flames to her friend, completely ignoring what she had done. The prince stared at the broken glass. His face did not move, but Jiwoo saw his hands shake. She grabbed a cloth and a new glass. She hurried over and knelt down to clean the mess. As she picked up the pieces, she looked up at him. "It's okay," she said quietly in her human language. She knew he could not understand her words, but maybe he would understand her tone. "It was not your fault." The prince looked down at her. His golden eyes were so sad, so tired. He nodded once, very slowly. Ji-woo finished cleaning and stood up. She placed the new glass in front of him and filled it with wine. Then she did something without thinking. She placed her hand over her heart and bowed her head slightly. It was a human gesture of respect. When she looked up, the prince was staring at her with wide eyes. He lifted one clawed hand and placed it over his own chest. He copied her movement exactly. Then his mouth opened just a little, and Ji-woo saw the smallest flicker of orange flame between his teeth. It died immediately. He could not speak, even if he wanted to. The expression on his face broke her heart. He looked like he wanted to say something so badly, but could not. He was trapped in silence while everyone around him spoke in fire. Ji-woo finished her shift late that night. She walked back to her small room in the server quarters. The room was tiny, with just a bed and a desk. But it was hers. She sat on the bed and thought about the prince. She thought about how lonely he must be, surrounded by people all the time, but never able to talk to any of them, never able to share his thoughts or feelings, just sitting in silence while the world moved around him. Ji-woo knew about sign language. Her cousin back on Earth was deaf, and Ji-woo had learned some basic signs as a child. She was not an expert, but she knew enough to have simple conversations. Could sign language work for the prince? Could he learn it? The more she thought about it, the more the idea grew in her mind. Tomorrow there would be another banquet. The Dragon King was staying for a week to finish negotiations. That meant the prince would be there too. Ji-woo made a decision. She would try to talk to him, really talk to him, not with words or telepathic fire, but with hands and gestures, with signs. Maybe it would not work. Maybe he would not understand. Maybe she would get in trouble for bothering a prince. But maybe, just maybe, she could give him something no one else had given him in a long time. A conversation, a connection, a friend. Ji-woo lay back on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow would be interesting. The next evening, Ji-woo's hands were shaking as she tied her server uniform. She had spent all morning practicing simple signs in front of her mirror. Hello? My name? Friend? Thank you. Simple words that anyone could understand, she hoped. The dining hall was even more crowded tonight. More aliens had arrived for the negotiations. There were tall, thin creatures with skin like glass, short, furry beings that rolled instead of walked, floating jellyfish aliens that glowed in the dark, and of course the draconians, breathing their colored flames across the room. Ji-woo spotted Prince Taemin immediately. He sat in the same spot as yesterday, next to his father, but tonight he looked even more isolated. The Dragon King had moved his chair slightly away, making more space between himself and his son. It was a small movement, but the message was clear. The king was embarrassed by his mute son. Ji-woo took a deep breath. She picked up a pitcher of water and walked toward the draconian table. Her heart was beating so fast. What if this was a terrible idea? What if she offended him? What if she got fired? But then she remembered the look in the prince's eyes yesterday, that desperate, lonely look, and she kept walking. She reached the prince's side and poured water into his glass. He did not look at her at first. He was watching his father talk to a group of important-looking aliens. The king was breathing red and gold flames, making everyone laugh with his stories. Ji-woo set down the pitcher. Then, very slowly, she moved her hand in front of the prince's view. Not in a rude way, just enough to get his attention. Taemin's eyes shifted to her. He looked confused. Humans did not usually try to get his attention. Ji-woo took a breath and raised her hand. She made the sign for hello. It was simple, just a wave, but done in a specific way. Then she pointed to herself and made the sign for her name. She fingerspelled it slowly. J-I-W-O-O. The prince stared at her. His golden eyes were huge. His mouth opened slightly. He looked at her hand, then at her face, then back at her hand. Jiwoo waited. Maybe he did not understand. Maybe this was stupid. But then something amazing happened. The prince lifted his own hand. His claws were long and sharp, not like human fingers at all. But he tried to copy her movement. He made a gesture that was almost like, hello. It was not perfect, but it was close. Jiwoo's heart jumped. She smiled big and nodded. Yes, exactly like that. She made another sign. This one meant you. Then she pointed to him and tilted her head. It was a question. What is your name? The prince understood. His eyes lit up with something Jiwoo had not seen before. Excitement. Hope. He pointed to himself and then tried to make signs with his claws. It was clumsy and unclear, but Jiwoo could tell he was trying to spell something. A voice boomed across the table. The Dragon King had noticed them. He breathed a sharp burst of orange flame at another Draconian and pointed at Jiwoo and the prince. The other Draconian looked over and breathed yellow flames back. They were talking about them. Jiwoo felt her stomach drop. She bowed quickly to the prince and hurried away with her pitcher. She could feel the king's burning eyes on her back. For the next hour, Jiwoo stayed away from the Draconian table. She served other aliens and tried to look busy. But she kept glancing at the prince. He was watching her too. Every time their eyes met, he would make a small gesture with his hand. He was trying to practice the signs she had shown him. Near the end of the meal, most of the aliens left the dining hall. They went to another room for drinks and more talking. The Dragon King left with them, his wings folded against his back as he walked. He did not look back at his son. Prince Taemin stayed behind. He sat alone at the long table, picking at the food on his plate with one claw. Jiwoo saw her chance. The other servers were busy cleaning the far side of the hall. She walked over to the prince with a tray of desserts. "Would you like some?" she asked, knowing he could not understand her words. But she pointed to the desserts and made an offering gesture. The prince looked at the sweets, then at her. He nodded and pointed to a small blue cake. Jiwoo placed it on his plate. Then she set down the tray and stood next to him. This was crazy. She was a server. He was a prince. She could get in so much trouble. But she did not care anymore. She raised her hands and started making signs. She went slowly, making sure each gesture was clear. She taught him thank you, and please, and yes, and no. Simple, useful words. The prince watched with total focus. His golden eyes followed every movement. Then he tried to copy her. His claws were not made for this. Human hands were much better for sign language, but he was smart. He figured out how to modify the signs to work with his claws. When he got one right, his whole face brightened. Jiwoo felt tears in her eyes, but she blinked them away. This was working. They were actually communicating. She taught him the sign for happy and then pointed to herself. I am happy. Then she pointed to him and made it a question. Are you happy? The prince paused. He looked down at his claws, then at the empty chairs around him. Then he looked back at Jiwoo. Slowly, he made the sign for no. Then he made another sign, one she had not taught him yet. But somehow she understood. He was copying the sad expression on her face from earlier. He meant sad or lonely. Jiwoo nodded. She understood. She pointed to him, then to herself, then made a bridge with her hands, together. The prince tilted his head, confused. Jiwoo tried again. She pointed to him and made the sign for you. Then she pointed to herself. Me. Then she made a sign she hoped he would understand. She put her two hands together, fingers intertwined. Friends. The prince's eyes went very wide. His mouth opened and closed. For a moment, Jiwoo thought he might cry. Do Draconians cry? She did not know, but then he copied the sign. Friends. His claws were not perfect for it, but the meaning was clear. He was smiling. It was the first time Jiwoo had seen him smile. His teeth were very sharp, but his smile was genuine and warm. A sound made them both jump. One of the head servers, a tall alien with purple skin, was walking toward them. He did not look happy. "Human server," he said in the common language, "you are needed in the kitchen, now." Jiwoo bowed quickly. "Yes, sir." She looked at the prince one more time. She made the sign for tomorrow and pointed to the ground. "Tomorrow, here." The prince nodded eagerly. He made the sign back. "Tomorrow." Jiwoo hurried away, following the head server. He led her to the back hallway, away from everyone else. Then he turned to face her. "You are not to bother the draconian prince," he said coldly. "He is not your concern. Do your job and nothing more. Is that clear?" Jiwoo felt anger rise in her chest. But she needed this job. She needed the money for her family. So she bowed her head and said, "Yes, sir. I understand." The head server walked away. Jiwoo stood in the empty hallway, her hands in fists. They wanted her to ignore the prince, to treat him like he did not exist, just like everyone else did. But she could not do that. Not anymore. She had seen the hope in his eyes. She had seen him smile. For the first time in probably years, someone had talked to him. Really talked to him. Jiwoo made a decision. She would keep teaching him signs. She would be careful. She would not get caught. But she would not abandon him. Tomorrow, she would come back. And the day after. And the day after that. The prince had waited his whole life for someone to see him, to treat him like a person instead of a broken thing. Jiwoo was not going to let him down. 3 weeks passed. Every evening, Jiwoo found ways to spend a few minutes with Prince Taemin. Sometimes it was just 30 seconds while she refilled his glass. Other times, when the dining hall was nearly empty, they had almost 10 minutes together. The prince learned fast, much faster than Jiwoo had expected. His claws made some signs difficult, but he adapted. He created modified versions that worked for his hands. Within a week, he knew over 50 signs. Within 2 weeks, he knew more than 100. But it was more than just learning words. For the first time in his life, Taemin could express himself. He could tell someone what he thought, what he felt, what he wanted. The change in him was obvious. He sat up straighter. His eyes were brighter. He even started to look around the room with curiosity instead of resignation. Jiwoo learned things about him too. Through their sign conversations, she discovered that he was 19 years old in Earth years. He loved reading and had memorized thousands of books from the Draconian library. He enjoyed music, especially the deep drums that he could feel vibrating through his chest. He hated formal dinners but loved flying at night when no one could see him. He also told her about his life, how his mother had died when he was young, how his father blamed him for being defective, how other Draconians avoided him or mocked him with their telepathic flames, saying cruel things they knew he could not respond to, how he had spent years sitting in rooms full of people, completely alone. Jiwoo's heart broke for him. But she also felt honored. He was trusting her with things he had never been able to tell anyone. She taught him more than just basic signs. She taught him jokes. The first time she made him laugh, the sound startled both of them. It was a strange, rumbling sound, almost like a purr, but it was genuine laughter. Other aliens in the dining hall turned to stare. They had never heard the mute prince make any sound before. One evening, Jiwoo brought a small tablet with her. During a quiet moment, she showed Taemin pictures of Earth. He was fascinated. He had never seen Earth before. His claws gently touched the screen as she showed him oceans and forests and cities. She showed him pictures of her family, her mother, her brother, her cousin, who was deaf. Taemin made the sign for beautiful while looking at the pictures. Then he made a sign that Jiwoo had taught him meant, "Tell me more." So she told him about Earth. about how humans could not breathe fire or fly or read minds, about how they were weak compared to most aliens, but also about how they were stubborn and creative and refused to give up. Taemin watched her face as she signed. Then he made a series of signs. You, not weak. You, strong. You, kind. Jiwoo felt tears in her eyes again. She signed back. You, not broken. You, strong too. Different, not broken. The prince's eyes shimmered. Draconians did cry, she learned, but their tears were not like human tears. They were small drops of liquid fire that evaporated before they fell. But their quiet friendship did not go unnoticed. Other servers saw them together. Aliens at nearby tables watched curiously. And worst of all, the Dragon King noticed. One night after the formal dinner ended, the king called his son to a private room. Jiwoo was cleaning nearby and saw them go. Through the partially open door, she could hear the king breathing harsh red flames. She could not understand the telepathic messages, but she could see Taemin's face. He looked hurt, ashamed. When Taemin came out 20 minutes later, his head was down. His hands were in fists. He walked past Jiwoo without looking at her. Jiwoo's stomach twisted. What had the king said to him? The next evening, Taemin did not come to dinner. Jiwoo's heart sank. Had the king forbidden him from attending? Or worse, had Taemin decided to stop learning signs because his father disapproved? But then, near the end of the meal, Taemin entered the hall. He looked tired, but when his eyes found Jiwoo across the room, he made a small sign. "Hello, friend." Jiwoo smiled with relief. She signed back quickly while pretending to adjust the dishes on a tray. "Hello? Are you okay?" Taemin nodded. Then he made another sign. "Later. Talk later." When the meal ended and most aliens had left, Taemin stayed behind as usual. Jiwoo came to his table. Her heart pounding. She signed, "What happened?" Taemin's claws moved slowly, forming signs. "Father, angry, says I embarrass him, says, human server, not proper, for prince." Jiwoo felt anger rise in her chest. Not proper? She was helping his son communicate for the first time in his life. "What will you do?" she signed. Taemin looked at her for a long moment. Then his claws moved with determination. "Keep learning, keep talking, father. Wrong." Jiwoo wanted to cheer. Instead, she signed, "Brave. You are brave." Taemin made a sound, that rumbling laugh again. He signed, "No, you brave. You help. When no one else care." They continued their lessons that night, but they were more careful. Jiwoo taught him signs faster, knowing their time might be limited. She taught him complex ideas, emotions, questions, stories. One night, Taemin asked her something through signs. "Why, you help me?" Jiwoo thought about it. She signed slowly, making sure he understood. "Everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone has something important to say. You deserve voice." Taemin stared at her. Then he signed something that made Jiwoo's heart squeeze. "You give me more than voice. You give me hope." From that night on, something changed between them. They were not just a teacher and student anymore. They were real friends, partners. They invented new signs together, mixing human sign language with draconian gestures. They created their own private language that no one else could understand. Taemin started teaching Jiwoo about draconian culture through signs. He told her about the history of his people, about the wars they had fought, about the planets they had explored, about the legends and myths passed down through generations of telepathic flames. Jiwoo was amazed. She had thought draconians were just powerful warriors. But through Taemin's stories, she learned they were also poets and philosophers. They had art and music and deep traditions. One evening, Taemin showed her something special, When the dining hall was empty except for them, he led her to a large window. Outside, the stars stretched forever. Tae-min pointed to a distant red star and signed, "My home, Draconia." Then he made a series of signs, telling her about his planet, about the floating mountains and rivers of lava, about the crystal caves where young Draconians learned to breathe their first flames, about the sky festivals where thousands of Draconians would fly together in patterns, creating art with their telepathic fire. Ji-woo could picture it all through his signs. She signed back, "Sounds beautiful. You miss it?" Taemin's expression grew sad. He signed, "Yes, but here too, miss being part of anything." Ji-woo understood. He was homesick not just for a place, but for belonging, for being included. She made a decision. She signed, "I will help you, teach you, everything. Then, maybe, others will see, others will understand. You have voice now. We make them listen." Taemin looked at her with such gratitude and hope that Ji-woo felt her determination grow even stronger. She did not know how they would make others listen. She did not know if it was even possible to change centuries of draconian prejudice against those who could not speak in flames. But she was human, and humans were stubborn. They did not give up. Taemin had spent 19 years in silence. Ji-woo was going to make sure the galaxy heard him, one way or another. The question was how, and that answer would come sooner than either of them expected. The Dragon King's visit was supposed to end after 1 month. But the negotiations were going badly. 3 different alien species wanted control of a valuable trade route near Draconian space. Arguments broke out every night. Deals fell apart. The tension in the Galactic Council Hall grew thick. The king decided to stay another month, which meant Tae-min stayed too. Ji-woo was happy about this, even though she felt guilty for being happy. The longer Tae-min stayed, the more they could talk. His signing was now almost fluent. They could have real, deep conversations. He told her about his dreams of exploring the galaxy. She told him about her hopes to save enough money to buy her mother a house near the ocean. But the longer the negotiations dragged on, the more dangerous the atmosphere became. Ji-woo noticed groups of aliens meeting in corners, whispering in their various languages. The Dragon King looked tired and frustrated. Other leaders looked angry. Something bad was going to happen. Ji-woo could feel it. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, Ji-woo was cleaning up the private meeting rooms. These were smaller rooms off the main hall where important aliens had secret discussions. She was not supposed to be in there, but one of the other servers had called in sick, so Ji-woo had to cover extra areas. She was emptying trash in one of the rooms when she heard voices. Quickly, she ducked behind a large curtain. If anyone found her, she could get fired. These rooms were supposed to be private after 9 o'clock. 3 aliens entered the room. Ji-woo peeked through a gap in the curtain. Her heart jumped. She recognized them. One was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. He was General Kwon, a military leader from the Centaurian Empire. The second was a reptilian creature with green scales, Commander Yuna from the Serpentine Coalition. The third was a floating blob with tentacles, Ambassador Hyun from the Gelatinous Collective. These were 3 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and they were all rivals of the Dragon King. "The plan is set," General Kwon said in the common language. "Tomorrow night, during the feast." "Are you certain it will work?" Commander Yuna hissed. "The Dragon King is powerful, and he always has guards." "The poison is undetectable," Ambassador Hyun's translator device spoke for him. "It will look like natural causes, a heart failure. By the time anyone realizes it was murder, we will have already claimed the trade routes." Ji-woo's blood turned to ice. They were planning to assassinate the Dragon King. "What about the son?" General Kwon asked. "The mute one?" Commander Yuna laughed, a horrible hissing sound. "That broken creature? No one listens to him. No one even acknowledges he exists. Even if he somehow witnessed the poisoning, he could not tell anyone. He will be irrelevant as always. Good, Ambassador Hyun said. Tomorrow night, then. The Dragon King falls and the trade routes become ours. They left the room. Ji-woo stayed behind the curtain, shaking. Her mind raced. She had to tell someone. She had to warn the king. But who would believe a human server? She was nobody. She had no proof. It would be her word against 3 powerful alien leaders. She could try to tell the guards, but the guards barely spoke to humans. They certainly would not take a warning seriously. Ji-woo waited until she was sure the hallway was empty. Then she ran back to the main dining hall. It was late, but maybe Tae-min was still there. He was. He sat alone at his usual spot, reading something on a datapad. When he saw Ji-woo running toward him, he stood up immediately. His claws moved rapidly. "What wrong?" Ji-woo's hands flew as she signed. She told him everything. About the 3 aliens, about the poison, about the plan to kill his father tomorrow night. Taemin's golden eyes grew wide with horror. His claws shook as he signed. "Must tell father, must warn him." "Yes," Ji-woo signed back. "You tell him. Now. Tonight." Taemin nodded. He turned and ran toward the private royal chambers where his father was staying. Ji-woo waited in the dining hall, her heart pounding. Minutes passed. 10 minutes. 20. 30. Then Tae-min came back. His head was down. His shoulders were slumped. He looked defeated. "What happened?" Ji-woo signed. Tae-min's claws moved slowly, sadly. "Father, not listen. Called guards. I tried to tell with gestures, but guards do not understand. Father, angry, said I waste his time, said I am foolish. He sent me away." Ji-woo felt like screaming. Of course. The Dragon King did not understand sign language. He saw his son making strange gestures and thought he was being stupid. And the guards, who only understood telepathic flames, had no idea what Taemin was trying to communicate. "What do we do?" Taemin signed. His eyes were desperate. "Father, we'll die. Tomorrow. I cannot save him." Ji-woo thought hard. There had to be a way. There had to be. Then an idea came to her. It was dangerous. It was probably stupid, but it might work. "Tomorrow night," she signed. "During the feast, I will watch. You will watch. We will see who puts poison. Then, together, we stop them. Catch them with proof." Taemin's eyes lit up. "Yes, but how we prove?" Ji-woo pulled out her small personal tablet. All servers carried them to take orders and track meals, but the tablets also had cameras. "I will record," she signed. "Video proof. No one can deny video." It was risky. If the assassins saw her recording, they might kill her too. But Ji-woo could not let the Dragon King die. Not just because he was a king, but because he was Taemin's father. Despite everything, Taemin still loved his father. Losing him would destroy the prince. Taemin grabbed her hands gently. His claws were careful not to hurt her. He signed with his eyes shining. "You risk life for my father. Father, who is cruel to me. Why?" Ji-woo signed back simply. "Because you love him. Because it is right. Because I am your friend." Taemin made that rumbling sound again, but this time it was not laughter. It was something deeper. Something like a purr of gratitude and love. He signed, "Best friend, best person I ever know." They spent the rest of the night planning. They figured out where Ji-woo would stand to have the best view. They planned what signals Taemin would make if he saw something suspicious. They went over every detail. Finally, as dawn approached, they had to separate. Ji-woo went back to her room. She did not sleep. She could not. Tomorrow night she would either save the Dragon King or die trying. She was just a server, just a human, just a nobody from Earth who had learned sign language as a kid. But tomorrow night, she would prove that even a nobody could be a hero. And Taemin, the mute prince that everyone ignored, would finally have his voice heard, even if that voice came through human hands instead of dragon fire. The feast that night was the grandest Ji-woo had ever seen. Every important alien in the galaxy seemed to be there. The dining hall glowed with lights from 100 worlds. Music played from floating instruments. The smell of exotic foods from dozens of planets filled the air. Ji-woo's hands shook as she carried trays of food. Her tablet was hidden in her apron pocket, camera ready. She had positioned herself near the Dragon King's table, close enough to see but not so close that she looked suspicious. Taemin sat next to his father, as always, but tonight his golden eyes were alert, watching. He caught Ji-woo's gaze across the room and made a tiny sign with one claw. Ready. Ji-woo nodded slightly. Ready. The feast began. The Dragon King was in good spirits tonight. The negotiations had finally made progress. A deal was close. He breathed golden flames at the other leaders, celebrating. Even Commander Yuna and General Quan pretended to be happy, breathing their own species' version of congratulations. Ji-woo watched everything. She saw Ambassador Hyun floating near the drink table. She saw General Quan talking to the servers who would bring the king's food. She saw Commander Yuna standing close to the king's chair. One of them would make their move soon. An hour passed. Then 2. Ji-woo's feet hurt from standing so long. Her nerves were stretched tight. Maybe she had been wrong. Maybe they had changed their plan. Then she saw it. General Quan made a subtle gesture to one of his servants. The servant nodded and walked toward the kitchen. Ji-woo's heart jumped. She followed at a distance, pretending to get more supplies. In the kitchen, the servant approached the head chef and said something. The chef nodded and turned to prepare a special dish. The servant leaned over the counter, and for just a second, Ji-woo saw his hand move over the plate. Something small and clear dropped from his fingers into the food. The poison. Ji-woo's hands moved fast. She pulled out her tablet and started recording. She captured the servant picking up the plate. She captured him walking back into the dining hall. She followed him with her camera, being careful to stay hidden behind other servers and guests. The servant brought the plate directly to the Dragon King. It was a special draconian delicacy, fire-glazed star fruit, the king's favorite. Taemin saw it too. His eyes went wide. He started to move, but Ji-woo caught his attention and signed quickly. Wait! Need proof! Need them! To admit. The Dragon King reached for the poisoned star fruit. Taemin made a desperate sound, a kind of roar from deep in his chest. Everyone turned to stare. The mute prince never made sounds. Taemin stood up and grabbed his father's hand before it reached the fruit. The king looked shocked, then angry. He breathed harsh red flames at his son, clearly saying something cruel. But Taemin did not back down. He pointed at the starfruit and made gestures. Warning gestures. Danger. The king just looked more annoyed. He tried to pull his hand away. Other draconians were breathing flames, probably mocking the prince. Look at the broken one, causing a scene again. Ji-woo saw General Quan starting to move. He was going to stop this before it went too far. She had to act now. She stepped forward into the open space in front of the king's table. Every eye in the room turned to her. A human server, interrupting the feast. This was unthinkable. Your Majesty, Ji-woo said loudly in the common language, her voice shaking but clear. That food is poisoned. I have proof. The entire hall went silent. You could hear a pin drop. The Dragon King stared at her like she had grown a second head. What nonsense is this? General Quan said quickly. Guards, remove this human. Wait, Ji-woo said. She held up her tablet. I have video. I recorded everything. The servant, the poison, all of it. She played the video on her tablet, but then projected it onto the large screen on the wall using the room's display system. Everyone in the hall could see it now, the servant dropping the poison. The poisoned plate being delivered. Gasps filled the room. The Dragon King stood up, his eyes blazing. He looked at the servant, who had gone pale and started backing away. The king breathed a massive blast of red and gold flames. Guards immediately grabbed the servant. "It was them!" the servant shouted, pointing at General Quan, Commander Yuna, and Ambassador Hyun. "They paid me! They planned it all!" The three conspirators tried to run, but the guards were faster. Within seconds, all three were captured. The dining hall exploded into chaos. Aliens were shouting in dozens of languages. The Dragon King was breathing flames of rage. More guards flooded into the room. In the middle of it all, Ji-woo felt someone touch her shoulder. She turned. It was Taemin. His eyes were shining with pride and gratitude. He signed to her. "You." "Saved him! You! Hero!" Ji-woo signed back. "No, we saved him! Together!" The Dragon King was issuing orders to his guards. The three conspirators were being dragged away. They would face justice for their attempted assassination. Then the king turned and saw Ji-woo and his son signing to each other. He watched for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he walked over to them. The king was massive up close, terrifying. His scales gleamed like rubies and his golden eyes burned with intelligence and power. He spoke in the common language so Ji-woo could understand. "You are the human server who exposed the plot?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Ji-woo said, bowing. "And you?" The king looked at his son. "You tried to warn me. I did not listen." Taemin nodded slowly. His hands moved, signing, even though his father could not understand. "What is he doing?" the king asked Ji-woo. "He is speaking, Your Majesty," Ji-woo said quietly. "In sign language. He has been learning it. He has a lot to say. He always has. But no one could understand him." The king stared at his son. Really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. Can you tell me what he is saying?" Ji-woo looked at Taemin. The prince signed, and Ji-woo translated. "He says, he is glad you are safe. He says, he loves you, even though you have been ashamed of him. He says, he has always loved you." The king's eyes widened. Something in his expression cracked. Was it guilt, regret, sadness? The king paused. "I did not know. I thought, because he could not speak our way, he had nothing to say." "I was wrong." Taemin's hands moved again. Ji-woo translated. "He says, he has always had things to say, stories to tell, ideas to share. He just needed someone to listen, someone to understand." The king looked at Ji-woo. "You taught him this language?" "Yes, Your Majesty. We have been meeting in the evenings. He learns very fast. He is brilliant." "I see that now," the king said softly. He looked back at his son. Can you teach me this sign language?" Taemin's whole body went still. His golden eyes filled with those burning tears. He signed frantically, and Ji-woo translated. "He says, yes. He says, he would like that very much." The Dragon King reached out and placed his large clawed hand on his son's shoulder. It was the first time Ji-woo had ever seen them touch. "I am sorry," the king said. "I was a fool. I thought you were broken, but you are not broken. You are my son, and you are perfect as you are." Taemin made that rumbling sound again, but this time it was full of joy. He grabbed his father in a hug. The king hugged him back, his wings wrapping around his son. Ji-woo felt tears running down her face. She tried to step back, to give them privacy, but the king stopped her. "Wait," he said. "You saved my life. You gave my son his voice. You have done more for my family than anyone in this galaxy. What can I give you to repay this debt? Jiwoo thought about her mother. Her sick mother back on Earth who needed medicine and a house near the ocean. She could ask for money. She could ask for anything. But instead, she said, "Teach others about sign language, Your Majesty. Show the galaxy that being different does not mean being broken. Give other people like your son a chance to be heard. That is all I want." The king stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "It will be done. I will make sign language an official form of communication in the Galactic Council. I will teach my people, and I will start by learning from my son." Word of what happened spread across the galaxy within days. The assassination plot, the heroic human server, the mute prince who saved his father. But more importantly, the story of sign language spread. Other species became interested. Aliens who had communication difficulties started learning. It became a bridge between species who could not understand each other's natural languages. The Galactic Council officially adopted sign language as a universal backup communication method. Classes were offered, teachers were trained, and at the center of it all was Prince Taemin, now known as the Ambassador of the Silent. He traveled to different planets, teaching sign language, showing everyone that those who cannot speak in traditional ways still have important things to say. Jiwoo stayed by his side as his official translator and friend. The Dragon King had offered her a real position on his diplomatic staff, with pay good enough to buy her mother 3 houses near the ocean. One night, months later, Jiwoo and Taemin stood on the observation deck of a spaceship watching the stars. Taemin signed to her, "Thank you for seeing me, for hearing me, for giving me everything." Jiwoo signed back. "You gave me something too. You taught me that one person, one small act, can change everything. You taught me that everyone deserves to be heard." Taemin smiled, that sharp-toothed, warm smile that Jiwoo had come to love. He made a final sign. "Friends forever." Jiwoo nodded, signing back. "Friends forever." In the end, it was not great warriors or powerful weapons that changed the galaxy. It was a simple human gesture, a hand reaching out, a willingness to listen, a refusal to accept that anyone should be silenced. And maybe that was the most human thing of all, the stubborn belief that everyone, no matter how different, deserves to have a voice, and the courage to give it to them, even when the rest of the galaxy said it was impossible.